I didn't notice the fear right away. It came in quietly, disguised as relief. The kind that settles in your chest when you're tired of holding everything together and someone else says, "I've got it." I remember thinking that trust was supposed to feel like this. Light, efficient, adult. I trusted her with our finances, and somewhere along the way I stopped asking questions. I'm not sure when confusion became my default setting. I just know that I started feeling like I was always a step behind my own life. Not lost exactly, more like slightly delayed. I'd hear myself say things like, "I think we're fine," without really knowing what fine meant. I told myself it was normal to not know every detail, that couples divide responsibilities, that this was maturity, not avoidance. Still, there was a low hum of uncertainty I couldn't quite mute. We met through work events. Long hours, bad coffee, that shared look people give each other when they're both exhausted but still showing up. We'd end up talking longer than planned, decompressing about deadlines and pressure. Felt easy, familiar. One night stands out. Sitting in a quiet corner after everyone else had left, comparing notes on stress like it was a language only we spoke. I remember thinking she seemed so composed about the future, like she had already mapped it out and was just inviting me along. Early on, that was part of the comfort. She was organized, confident, calm in a way I wasn't. When conversations turned to money, savings, plans, she didn't flinch. She spoke with certainty. I felt grounded listening to her. Relieved, honestly. I'd spent years worrying about getting it wrong, about not doing enough. Letting her lead felt like stepping off a ledge and realizing there was solid ground underneath. The first small crack didn't feel like a warning. Felt like a misunderstanding. I realized one day that I didn't fully understand our accounts anymore. Not in a dramatic way. Just a moment where I was trying to picture where everything was, and the image wouldn't come together. I told myself it was because things had gotten more complex, that this was what shared lives looked like. I rationalized it easily, too easily. She offered to handle all the bills, to simplify things. It sounded practical, efficient. I agreed without hesitation. Then I stopped checking statements. First because I didn't need to, then because it felt awkward to ask. Like I'd be questioning her competence, or worse, her integrity. I didn't want to be that person, the suspicious one, the one who turns teamwork into surveillance. Big decisions started happening without much discussion. A new commitment here, an adjustment there. She'd mention them casually, like they were already settled. I'd nod along, assuming it had all been thought through. When I did ask questions, they landed heavy, like accusations I hadn't meant to make. I learned to soften my tone, then to shorten my questions. Eventually, to keep them to myself. There was an everyday moment that should have brought us closer. We were supposed to sit down together one evening just to look things over. No pressure. That was the plan. But the night turned into dinner, then into scrolling on our phones, then into sleep. Kept getting postponed. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became after things settle. I told myself it wasn't urgent. I told myself trust meant patience. Somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't know our financial reality. Not in a vague sense, in a concrete, unsettling way. I couldn't answer basic questions about our future without guessing. I felt embarrassed by that. Embarrassed enough to stay quiet. Embarrassed enough to believe that ignorance was better than conflict. I kept thinking that if I just held on a little longer, things would stabilize. That this was a temporary imbalance, not a permanent one. The turning point wasn't loud. It didn't come with an argument or a confrontation. It was quiet. A discovery I hadn't been looking for. Commitments I didn't remember agreeing to. Numbers that didn't align with the story I'd been telling myself. It wasn't the details that hurt the most. It was the realization that I'd been absent from decisions that shaped my own security. I sat with that for a long time before saying anything. Long enough for the weight to settle. I felt betrayed but also complicit. Afraid but unsure of who I was afraid of. I kept defending the situation in my head, telling myself she was just being practical, that someone had to take control. Even as I felt erased by it, even as trust started to feel expensive, the inner conflict surprised me with its persistence. Part of me wanted to stay, to fix it, to believe that imbalance didn't have to mean harm. Another part was quietly calculating how I'd start over financially at my age. That thought scared me more than I expected. The idea of rebuilding from a place I hadn't even realized I'd fallen into. I wondered if I'd waited too long to name the problem, or if I'd known all along and just chosen not to see it. I'm still not sure where that leaves us. I know that understanding didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces, each one heavier than the last. I don't know if trust can survive imbalance, or if ignorance is something we choose, or something we slip into when the cost of knowing feels too high. If you've lived something like this, I'm curious, what would you do if this were you?